We live in an age where the great powers, well, they can't really fight each other head-on. The stakes are just too high. So instead, a different kind of war has come to define our world, a shadow war, fought on someone else's land with someone else's lives. Today, we're gonna pull back the curtain on this hidden battlefield.
Just look at the headlines any day of the week. You see it, right? Fires just erupting all over the place. Yemen, Syria, all across Africa. On the surface, they look like separate conflicts, but they're all burning with the same strange intensity. And it really makes you wonder, are these just isolated events, or are they all just embers from some much bigger, invisible fire? And that's where we find the key, the one thing that unlocks this whole puzzle, the proxy war. This is the engine, the mechanism that's driving so much of the instability we see. It's a pretty clever and pretty brutal way for major powers to wage war against each other without ever actually, firing a single shot at one another. They just pour gasoline on someone else's fire. Probably the easiest way to think about it is like this. The world is a giant chessboard. The big global powers, they're the players making these cold, calculated moves. But the pieces on the board, the pawns, well, those are the local conflicts, the civil wars, the insurgencies, and they're the ones being sacrificed, all to gain some kind of strategic advantage in a much, much larger game. And if you want to see this grim chessboard in action, there's no better place to look than the Middle East. I mean, for decades, it's been the classic battleground for these shadow wars. It's a region where local problems get blown up and twisted by powerful outside forces. Right at the heart of it all is this incredibly bitter rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia that's been going on for decades. Their struggle for dominance is like a mirror image across the whole region. You look at Yemen, Syria, Lebanon. In each place, one power backs one side and the other backs the opposite. They pour in weapons, money, you name it. And the goal isn't really to win that local war, it's to bleed their main rival dry. And what happens? Entire countries get turned into these never-ending battlegrounds. But listen, this isn't just a regional thing. The global superpowers, they've practically perfected the art of the proxy war, and each one has its own unique playbook. So let's look at Russia and Syria. What they did there was frankly a masterclass in how to do this stuff. They didn't just pick a side and send some weapons, no, they completely reshaped the entire conflict. They mixed direct military support for the Assad regime with a whole bunch of loyal proxy groups on the ground. And with that combo, Moscow locked down its strategic interests, put itself back on the world stage as a major player, and really undermined Western influence there. Now, the United States plays it a bit differently, but it's just as impactful. It's more of an indirect hand, you could say. Instead of sending in their own troops, the focus is on supplying weapons, intel, and top-notch training to allies, whether that's governments or other groups. Think about how they backed local forces against ISIS, or how they're arming Ukraine today. The goal is always the same: push back against rivals and shape the outcome, all without having to commit to a direct fight. But just when you think you've got the rules figured out, the game changes. There's a new piece on the board now, a really dangerous one that operates completely in the shadows and basically rewrites all the rules of engagement. We're talking about the rise of the modern mercenary. Okay, so this is where things get even messier. These private military companies, or PMCs, they're everywhere now. You've probably heard of groups like Russia's Wagner Group or the American company Academy. What they do is offer governments this powerful tool, plausible deniability. It wasn't us. But they also bring a profit motive to war. These are for-profit businesses. They can help a country expand its influence, all while operating completely outside the normal rules of war. It just blurs all the lines and makes a dark world even darker. So we've talked a lot about strategy and tactics and players on a chessboard, but what's the real cost? What is the human price of this global game? To really understand that, we have to look at one country in particular, a nation that has been a proxy battleground for nearly half a century, Afghanistan. This timeline, it tells a story of unrelenting tragedy. It really all kicked off with the Soviet invasion back in '79. That's when the outside world started pouring in support for the Mujahideen. And since then, the country just hasn't known peace. One foreign power after another has come and gone, each picking their favorite side, and each one leaving behind more weapons, more division, and a humanitarian disaster that just keeps getting worse. 241,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated number of people who died directly from the fighting in the Afghanistan and Pakistan war zone. And that's only since 2001. And that number, it doesn't even touch the deaths from disease, from starvation, from people being forced from their homes. That is the cost of being a pawn on the board. And the real scars, they run so much deeper than any number can show you. We're talking about entire generations of people who have been traumatized. This was a conflict that maybe, just maybe, could have been resolved locally, but it was twisted by all this outside interference into this monster of a decades-long struggle. And out of that chaos, it became the perfect breeding ground for extremist groups. Groups like Al-Qaeda, who then took the fight global and pulled the world's superpowers even deeper into the flames.
So, this all leads to one final and frankly terrifying question. We've seen the human cost, we've seen the devastation, but what is the ultimate risk of these shadow wars? Where is this all headed? Because it feels like we're all standing right on the edge of a cliff.
Because here's the thing, every single one of these proxy fights, it's a powder keg. All it takes is one mistake, one miscalculation. A jet gets shot down, an airstrike hits the wrong set of advisors. Any little spark could set the whole thing off. And then you're not talking about a shadow war anymore. Then the great powers are dragged into fighting each other directly. And that would be catastrophic for all of us.
So we're left with this, when this grand game is played by superpowers, hidden in the shadows, when they use entire nations as their chessboard and real people as their pawns, it leaves one question, doesn't it? Who is it that truly, ultimately pays the price?
At Geotectonics, our mission is to uncover these profound tectonic shifts, offering clarity in a world of complexity. If this analysis deepened your understanding, please like this video to support our work, share it with others who seek real insight, and subscribe to Geotectonics to ensure you never miss our next deep dive. We'll continue to explore the crucial geopolitical movements that define our time. Thank you for joining us.